simple, but it's not easy. If it moves, measure it. Work on your business, not just in your business. As bar owners, your job is not to make cocktails, to schmooze customers, and to lock the place up at night. It's to spend a bit of time working on your business. And finally, our industry is filled with urgent. Somebody doesn't turn up for a shift, you need to get change, something's broken. We're filled with urgent, you need to work on the important as well. And the stuff I'm going to talk about today is the important. So 10 ideas. Firstly, motivation. Why did you get into this industry? You're a great bartender. Everyone says you should open your own bar. A drunk customer says they'll fund you. That is a bad reason to get into it. Some of the common reasons we get: you love hosting people, you love throwing parties. Why don't you open a bar? Terrible idea, just throw more parties. Running a business that does this is significantly different to doing it at your house, throwing parties, promoting things and stuff like that. You're a great bartender. That's fantastic. I've known a lot of great chefs who make great food, who open their own restaurant that tanked horribly because the skill set is different. Because it's easy. Come on, everybody needs to drink, everyone likes getting drunk, you open a bar, it's easy. I can tell you now, any owners in this room now will say it's not easy, and I almost guarantee most owners in the room would be more than happy to sell you their business now, because there's a lot of people trying to get out of this industry. It's easy to make money. You buy a bottle of vodka for 10 euros, you sell it at 8 euros a shot. Come on, this is like falling off a log. It's not. To really understand profit and loss accounts, to understand that the average bar in this country, or the average bar in America, makes a 4.6% net profit. At the end of the year, when everything's paid for, 4.6%, which is a terrible business. You can make 25, 30%, but it takes a lot of work and you need to focus on this sort of stuff. It's cool. A lot of people invest in bars and restaurants because they made their money in other things, in insurance, in the city, in car dealerships, in fast food restaurants. They don't get them laid. To be able to say that they own a cool bar or own a cool restaurant gets people laid. But as I say, it's so much more than that. And also the entrepreneurial spasm. You're a great bartender and you suddenly figure out that the bar that's making so much money that you're working in, it's down to you. So you should do it yourself. Why are you making money for somebody else? That's great, but you just can't be an entrepreneur or a great bartender. You need to be a great technician and a great manager as well. So as I say, you need to look at these. Good reasons. You've got experience of working with successful and unsuccessful places. If you just work in good places, it's not as good as if you work in a couple of places that should have been good, but fucked up. I love people who failed, who are still doing this, because the most successful people fail the most, because they don't take hardship for granted. They know what to look for in a failing business, and so they can avoid those. They've made the mistakes before. You understand how bars run as businesses. A lot of this is about running a business, rather than necessarily running a bar. You know, you're not in the drinks business, you're not in the bar business unless you're selling bars. You're in the experience business, but you need to make money out of it. This is something that we are doing for a profit, because your staff, your suppliers rely on you to pay their mortgages, to pay their kids' school fees, to put food on the table. So if you don't understand how businesses run, you're unlikely to run a successful bar business. You have an entrepreneurial history. So anyone who's set up small businesses, where they've promoted nightclubs, where they've sold stuff out of the back of their car, where they rip their friends off at school selling them something, I don't care what it is. It could be legal or illegal, but if you have no history of entrepreneurship, you are probably going to fail within the bar business. And as I say, you know your strengths and weaknesses. I work with an awful lot of customers, and the one moment I know they get it is when they say, fuck, it's amazing what you can achieve when you admit what you don't know. You don't know everything, so you need to find mentors, you need to find support, you need to ask for help, you need to think of yourself as part of the community rather than necessarily an individual. Planning. I'm opening my own bar. It should open in March or April next year, which means it'll probably open in May or June. But I am working now constantly, 50 or 60 hours a week, doing planning, financial planning. I'm designing the guest experience, how I'm going to recruit people, what my advert is going to look like. I'm not thinking about drinks yet. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to stock. I'm thinking about all the other planning that you as a businessman needs to be doing. So for example, realistic financing. You need to know how much money it's going to take to open your bar, and you need to get about 25% more than that for contingency funds and the fuckeries that happen in life, etc. Having proper financing, having it not necessarily just from the 3 Fs. Banks aren't lending you money to open up the new Pisco bar in Frankfurt. You're borrowing from friends, fools, and family. It becomes very, very personal. You borrow money off your father-in-law and the bar doesn't make money, Christmas lunch is going to be really difficult, etc. So make sure you know the motivation of your investors and make sure you have more than enough money. Too many people I know spend all their money on design and suddenly, fuck, they've got to buy fridges from domestic places because they just don't have the money for it. They can't pay themselves. They say, I'll start off taking a small salary and then I'll get bigger as we make money. It doesn't work like that. You need to make sure all your costs and all your financing are covered. Sturdy, realistic business plan. Get someone to help you write a business plan, unless you studied economics or business management at college. Your business plan for you as a bar owner is more important than your cocktail list. That's not important to you anymore. When it comes down to it, is your business plan, the idea of sales projections. We do it for, in an ideal world, this is what we're going to make. If fucking nobody turns up, or if it floods, or if it's terrible weather, or if the economy crashes, this is what's going to happen. And this is somewhere in between. But spreadsheets aren't your friend, but spreadsheets are a very necessary tool. Poor budget management. I was talking in a design talk yesterday, and they said, what happens when your designer goes over budget? And I said, well, my fucking designer doesn't go over budget, because anything he wants to spend, he needs to run past me. I sign the checks. We run out of money. I'm not going to pay him for a start. That's where his budget comes from. But you're going to do a new cocktail list. How much budget do you associate putting together a new cocktail list or changing your cocktail list? How much money for research? How much money for testing and for training? How much money to test that your customers actually want it, etc.? What is your budget for this? A lot of people just don't have budgets and don't know how to manage budgets. It's all a bit sort of, well, it's whatever it takes. You can't run a business like that. The ability to understand a profit and loss account. We teach all our bartenders how bars make and lose money. And weirdly, my bars make more money because the staff understand how bars make and lose money. I'm not training bartenders, I'm training operators. I get a roll of 100 coins and say, right, this is theoretically the money. Of that 100 coins, 32 coins, they go for rent. 15 coins go to salary. This goes for insurance. This goes for electricity. This goes for cost of goods. And it leaves you with 2 or 3 coins, 4 or 5 coins at the end. My staff understand how bars make and lose money, and they act accordingly. The right team and the right partners. You're not in the drinks business, you're in the experience business. If the place falls down, if you're not working, you don't own a business, you own your job. You need to make it sustainable, so if you're not there, the place still does very, very well. So you need to find the right people. You're not hiring ice machines, you're finding people to work within your business. So a great bartender from Shanghai doesn't unplug in Shanghai and plug very well into Frankfurt or Berlin. It needs to be someone who's going to fit in your team. So you need to be really good at planning how you're going to recruit. You can't just headhunt, you can't just poach people, because if you can poach them from another bar, they can be poached from you. So putting that together, the right partners. Not just your suppliers, but also your investors as well. You need to get those things in. You need to have a decent plan for your brand, and I'm not talking about a logo, I'm talking about what the purpose of this bar is. Why should people come and drink in there? Why should they come and work in there? What will it say about them if they do either things? Make it a story, make it real and human. And also the idea, obviously, about the culture within your business. Culture, very simply, is how your staff behave when you're not there. You get that right, and running a bar is significantly easier because everyone acts like they're an owner. Everyone acts because you empower them, and also you provide them with a place to be the best possible version of themselves. Make sure you have a very strong back, a very thick skin, and lots of stamina, because any bar owner here will tell you it is ridiculously tiring. Now that you have social media with 3,000 drunk critics in the taxis going home telling you everything that you did wrong this evening, it becomes really, really personal. And finally, it may sound negative, an exit plan. You've got great investors, you've got great partners, you're all great friends. 2 years down the line, you fucking hate one another. You want to go in different directions, but you've got no way of getting out of the business. Who sells to who? What valuation does it have, etc. Make sure you have an exit plan. May sound negative, but I see too many bars where people are unhappy, locked into it, can't get out, unwilling to pay profits to someone else, etc., and the business tanks horribly. Your concept. It doesn't matter what you do, it matters how you do it, etc. I really believe being part of the experience business, it is the experience. People won't go to the office on a Monday and say, I had the greatest El Presidente cocktail in this bar. They will say, I had a great time. So your concept, the idea behind your bar is important. And it needs to be not necessarily envelope shredding. We'll talk about how innovation is a bit weird, but people will come in and say, wow, there's a gap in the market here. Nobody's opened a tiki bar in this city. Nobody's opened a speakeasy in this city. I've been to one in London. I've been to one in New York. It's a great idea. Yeah, there's a gap in the market, but is there a market in that gap? Is it the sort of place, do you decide to do a 1980s theme bar? It's great, everybody goes there once. They take tourists from out of town, but they don't go there regularly. So make sure that your concept has a market. If you're in a student area, don't do a super high-end martini bar. And vice versa, if you're looking to do a dive bar and rock and roll bar, maybe the centre of town is not the place for you. Don't set up a bar to impress your friends and peers. Don't sell more tequilas than the bar next to you. Don't necessarily do this to make yourself seem good. Look at what your customers want. You love mezcal, you want to open a mezcal bar, etc. You want more mezcals than anybody else. Nobody in your city drinks mezcal. Destined for failure. You are in the experience business, so your staff and the way they handle people and things like that are key. So your concept has to be friendly to people, and it has to fit into that sense of a local culture. And I honestly believe endless and relentless innovation is not the key to success. I do not want to shred the envelope in my bar because shredded envelope tastes like shit. I want to run a bar where if you like drinking, if you're a bit of a geek, you can have fun because it's a well-collected back bar. The bartenders are technically proficient and humble enough to actually follow your directions. But if you just want to go to a bar, shock horror, to have fun, to get laid, to listen to music, to have some drinks, you're not going to feel bad that you've ordered the wrong drink or you're in a place that's too cool for you, etc. Making, as I say, getting your sous vides and getting your rota vapors and getting your bizarre, it doesn't always work. To go in and see a cocktail list where I don't recognize any of the cocktails on the list, I'm just going to order classics. A lot of the time you can't make a classic, but you can make this, star anise, foam doped, triple distilled, just forget it. You know what I mean? Let's get it to the right element like that. Economics. I'm obviously English. And as you know, we had the Olympics recently. We did very, very well in the Olympics. It seems we do very, very well in sports that involve sitting down. So horse riding, rowing, and cycling. But cycling we do really well in. And it's because we have a man in charge of our cycling team called David Brailsford. And this may seem weird, but David Brailsford not only did well for the Great British cycling team, but also the Sky Tour de France team, because he uses an idea called marginal gains. He realized that during the Tour de France, they sleep in 21 hotels. But if he went along and made sure that each hotel room was the same in terms of brought their mattress, their air conditioners, their humidifiers, their pillows, then his cyclists would sleep 5% better, which means the next day they would cycle 0.5% better. If he could do the same with nutrition, if he could do the same with all of this, he could find 0.5% here, 1% there, 0.25% there. Suddenly, his cyclists are going 10% better than everyone else. As a business owner, marginal gains is what you need to be doing. You need to be looking at constantly at ways of improving the business, improving the recruitment, improving the prices you pay, reducing costs from electricity, glassware, all of the flux costs that can go up or down. Your job as a bar owner is to focus on this, not on what products you're going to be stocking on the back bar and whether you're using an 8-to-1 martini or a 7-to-1 martini. You can pay other people to do that. Your job is looking to improve and streamline. I hate you. Maybe it's you. Rating things like the revenue cap. Most bars, most restaurants do 80% of their business in 20% of their opening hours. Over the night, over the week, over the month, over the year. Look at it, it's a really weird statistic. So a lot of people say, hey, we're really busy on Friday and Saturday, we don't have to think about that. Let's look at Monday and Tuesday because we're really quiet. It takes a lot more money to build a Monday or Tuesday, but on the Thursday, Friday, Saturday when you're busy, are you taking as much money as you can? The revenue cap is the maximum amount of money you can put out over the bar per bartender per hour. Your point of sale system will tell you that if you analyze it, etc. Opportunity cost is saying, okay, a bartender can make, let's say, 600 euros an hour. I don't know what that rate is for your bar, but 600 euros an hour means every second they're making 16 cents. So if they have to run 10 seconds down there to get a glass and run 10 seconds back, that's 20 seconds at 16 cents a second they're not making. So moving the glassware, moving some of the glassware, changing things around behind the bar constantly, changing the way the point of sale system is laid out because you're now serving different drinks and it's taking longer to get to those drinks is hugely important. Things like revenue cap, things like opportunity costs are hugely important. Q12 survey, this is a public survey run by Gallup that measures staff engagement. Not how happy they are, because they may love working in your bar because they get to drink all your tequila and fuck all your customers. They love it, but they don't believe in what you're trying to do. Engagement measures whether they believe what you're trying to do. And I have to say, if anyone wants to be a better manager or leader, look at the Q12 survey. And basically it's 12 questions, yes or no. Your job as a manager is to make your staff say yes to all these questions, not by beating them to death with the chain of command, but by actually doing it. And they are a great 12-point checklist of being a great manager and being a great leader and making people believe that they trust you and that they believe in what you're trying to do. And they don't work there because they like sleeping indoors and eating hot food. It's because you do something that fulfills them, makes them feel they have purpose, etc. in their life. So look at things like the Q12. Slice committee. I'm a busy manager. All my managers are busy. And I'm suddenly going to suggest that you do lots of things like customer surveys or running the Q12 survey. We set up a slice committee. The slice committee, we ask the staff and we say, we want a small group of people that are representative of the business. So maybe a bartender, a server, someone in the back of house, maybe someone from the host team, the management team. And we're going to meet once a month as a slice of the business and work through some of these common issues. And also create a way that when decisions are made, you can go back and explain it to your team and to the rest of your colleagues, etc. It's a way for people to get a little taste of management without having to give up their cushy jobs, because I don't know about you, I was made a manager, they doubled my hours, halved my salary, and gave me responsibility with no real training to do so. A slice committee is an awesome way of getting things done and integrating a team. Realizing the value of constant education for staff and management. Pay your staff to turn up for training because you're the one who are going to benefit from it, although they're learning stuff that they can take away. But also train your management. Educate your managers to become better managers and better leaders. Buy books, watch videos. A lot of people train bartenders, not many people train managers. And of course, then you get to a lions led by donkeys situation. Think about investing versus spending. I love low-cost, no-cost situations and solutions to problems, but occasionally you may say, to raise your revenue cap, you have to put another speed rail in here. Though, do you realize how expensive that is? But you say you're not spending money, you're investing money. By putting that €1,000 speed rail in, you will increase the revenue cap by €10 per bartender per hour, and within a month it will pay for itself. So it's balancing up in spending versus investing. And finally, really understanding the size of the prize. Recruitment is a huge problem now. People are losing staff constantly. And so we say, okay, well, how much does it cost every time you have to recruit a new staff member? And they're like, hey, it's uniform, it's a couple of days training. It's more than that. It's writing the job ad, reading the resumes, scheduling the interviews, doing the reference checks, doing the trade. It's going to cost you €5,000 a bartender, €5,000 a server. If you lose 30 servers a year, that's €150,000. So if you spent 50 to save and bring down the 150 to, let's say, 50, that's a net gain of €50,000. So when it comes down to understanding what this is worth, because you measure it and put a price against it, allows you to then see how much you should be investing into it. Vanity and ego. Now again, this is one of these things that bartenders in particular, and I say this having been one, should be important, because the difference between God and a bartender is that God doesn't think he's a bartender. But there is a lot of personality, there's a lot of emotion tied up in bars and restaurants, and it leads to a lot of problems. Owners and bartenders, but really, it's not a hobby, it is a business. People rely on you, they rely on you to make their rent payments, and if you're not taking it seriously, because hey, you don't mind not making money because you've made money elsewhere, it is going to cause problems in the business. Your staff will steal from you. If you don't treat them nicely, they are not going to treat you nice back. How many owners do we know treat the bar as a playground for themselves, to come in, flirt with girls, buy bottles of champagne, get service first, tell all their friends to name drop, oh yeah, I know the owner, I don't need to pay for drinks. It's like, really? Anyone who's ever worked a door, the owner apparently has thousands of friends who all try and get in the front of queues and things like that. Thinking that when you run a bar, you know everything, or more importantly, being too embarrassed to admit what you don't know. A lot of the time, the questions when I ask them, people, they're making so much money, or the number's so high, they don't want to tell you because they're embarrassed. The number's so low, they don't want to tell you they're embarrassed, or they just don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. Revenue cap, staff turnover rates, variance rates, they're like, no idea. But I'm not going to admit I don't know. As soon as you start admitting these things, then you can start to learn and thrive from that point onwards. Playing favourites with the staff. Whenever I go for a job, I ask them, what do I have to do to get the best shifts? Like, what is good in this place, etc. But too many managers, too many owners play favourites with staff, buddies that they have, people they're trying to sleep with, or they have slept with, or whatever it may be. And it is a recipe for disaster. This, again, for bartenders, it's a business, it's a career, it's a profession, it's not a lifestyle. As I've seen too many people burn out in this industry because they couldn't refuse a drink. We don't talk about the sex, the drugs, and the rock and roll. I mean, that's the reason I got into bartending, not because I love serving people or love working with flavors, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But rather like with food, you know when you're full. You know when you're full, you don't need any more food. But with drink, we don't. Another shot, another shot, another shot, another shot. And that's a false way of looking at things, etc. Your ego and your vanity, that you can't say, no, I'm good. I don't need this shot of Jägermeister. I don't need this shot of Jameson. I love it, but I just don't need it. I'm full, thank you very much. It's hugely important. And also, I suppose, nowadays, increasingly important is people seem to confuse competitions with the real world. Like, to say you're the world's best bartender means nothing, unless you know, you can be the world's fastest bartender, the most knowledgeable bartender, the one who can drink the most, maybe. But a lot of bartenders, because brands are sponsoring competitions, they think if they win a competition, their shit doesn't smell. It does. The only way to see who the best bartender is if you ask every single customer who served them that night and they said, yeah, I had a fucking awesome time. And that goes on every single day. Thank you. Education. Don't get me wrong, I love competitions. It raises the profile, the status of bartenders. It allows you to meet other bartenders from around the world. It grows community and stuff like that. But a lot of people just get carried away with it and, as I say, start to get it wrong. Education. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I said it yesterday, a bartender who knows more mash bills than they know jokes is not a good bartender. You want to freak a bartender out? Ask them to tell you a joke. They will struggle like you wouldn't believe. But as I say, they can tell you all the botanicals in every single gin they stock on the back bar. It's like, I really don't give a shit, if the truth be known. I'd like to know where the nearest ATM machine is. Where's the best place to get a taxi around here? Is there a brothel around here? This is the stuff that a lot of customers really want to know, rather than necessarily all the technical stuff that we're being fed. So what does education look like? Firstly, what's your training budget? I don't know anybody here who runs a bar, etc., but the first question I have is, what is your training budget? How much do you spend a year on your staff? And that could be paying them to turn up for branded training run by brand ambassadors, because brand ambassadors are pretty good, it has to be said. But brand ambassadors are telling you what the brand wants to know, not necessarily what you need to know. They'd be telling you exactly what's in this liquid, but nobody ever trained your bartenders how to use a jigger. Because, hey, we're all bartenders, we've been doing it 10 years, of course we can use a jigger or a measure. We've never had training for it. So the idea of what is your budget? I tell people a minimum is 1% of your gross turnover. So you turn over €1 million a year, 10,000 euros should be spent by you bringing experts in, paying people to turn up for training, etc. The most successful people pay more than that, and people argue and they say, why the fuck should I train them? Because they're just going to leave. I'm like, right, so you'd rather have trained people who leave than untrained people who stay? Yeah, how's that working out for you? So have a training budget, and this is not just relying on brands, so that training they get is great, but it's making sure that you're giving them that education. I have planned education. I've always worked in places that have planned education. First Tuesday for bartenders, second Tuesday for servers, because again, let's train servers as much as we train bartenders. But as I say, it's not just knowledge, it's also about skills. To make sure they know how to use a jigger, to make sure they know how to throw a customer out. Service recovery, what your staff do when shit goes wrong. Because I'm sure shit does go wrong. It should be consistent. But who here has ever given staff training on what it looks like to get a pissed off customer to be less pissed off? To take a problem and turn it into a, wow, they fucked up, but the way they recovered, that makes me like them even more. So I say, do we do this on training? No, we want to do more mezcal training, and more sherry training, and more amaro training. We're training people a lot of the time on some of the wrong stuff. Also, of course, once you've trained them, evaluate them. I love a meritocracy, where the idea of the best people get the best shifts, get paid more money, etc. And to have a graduated scale where we test people, and if you pass tests and spend time there, you get paid more money, that makes sense, because I know someone who is good, and I develop what is good, will earn more money. So of course I should be paying them more money. And it means you start not to lose staff, etc. But a lot of people put you through a training session and never test you afterwards, and never test you on it 6 months later, or never test you every year to be able to do this. It's only fair, I think, to let people know where they sit in the scheme of things. If you've got 10 bartenders, you have a best and a worst. You decide what best and worst is, but as long as all the staff know, they know what they have to do to move from worst to be best. And yeah, the worst bartender in your bar may be the best bartender in another bar. That doesn't matter. This is my bar that we're working in now. Make sure we have management and leadership education. You're going to train your bartenders, train your managers. unless they've all come out of, Lausanne Hotel School and things like that, unless they're all supremely knowledgeable, they need coaching, they need help, they need support. Get other managers in successful properties to come in and talk to them about it, etc. Buy a book, read it and discuss it. Watch a TED Talk and say, what did we learn? What was useful, etc. There's so much management and leadership education out there, but we're too busy to do it. And how's that working out? A clear schematic. If you join me as a bar back, I will show you what you have to do to go from bar back to bartender to senior bartender to bar manager to general manager to operations director. You may not be able to do that, but there is a clear pathway. This is not a dead-end job. You work in the kitchen as a dishwasher, I'll show you what you have to do to get to this cook, to that cook, to this, etc. I will help you do that. It's very clear to see that. Financial transparency. Tell your staff whether you're making money or losing money. Explain to them how bars make money and lose money. Because they may want to open their own bar, and they quite like this fact they get this information, but also they will behave differently, because they think you're making a fortune, but you're not. You're 3, 4, 5, 6% net profit. When they see that, they're like, fuck, I made more than that last year. So the idea of financial transfer, open book management, as they used to call it, is an important thing. And also use better tools and methods to educate. No longer the 300-page super manual that has 250 house cocktails listed in it and we give it to you to read. Bullshit. I have in my pocket a video camera and a video editing system that allows me to take that house cocktail, video someone making it, talking about it, bringing it to life. I can send it out to my bartenders who can watch it time and time and time and time again. They can comment on it and say, I had a customer who liked it this way, or I learned this variation the other day. And it creates a collaborative society, but nowadays just giving people a Rolodex of cocktails, it may be useful to have, but it's not going to be the best tool for this, etc. And also life skills. I worked with some people that every 3 months somebody would come in and give us training on something nothing to do with wine or beer or spirits or cocktails. Where people come in and talk about parenting. I'm not a parent, but apparently it's a rather difficult thing to do. To have someone who's had kids, grown up, and can talk to people, new parents, about this. How to balance your life. Work-life balance, what the fuck does that mean? But to have someone who's good at doing it. You want to buy a house, you want to lose weight. We'd bring people in to talk about how to be healthy or how to buy a house and sort your financing out. It seems weird, but if you treat people, treat them like they matter, they start to behave like they matter, etc. So don't just do work skills there. Measurement and control. Now, I work for a company called Barmetrics, and obviously we're about measurement. But measure what matters. If it moves, measure it. Because then you can see if I'm doing something, is this making the needle move up or down? If it's good for me, I'm going to do more of it. Wicked. If it's bad for me, I'm going to stop doing it and make sure I don't do that sort of thing again. But you don't have any idea whether your new job ad is helping with recruitment unless you can measure it in some way. So I very simply, this is theoretically a dashboard of a car. Because there are so many numbers in this industry. There's so many variables in driving a car, but this is the shit that matters. The speedometer, if I go faster than this, I'm going to get arrested. The fuel, if it goes lower than this, I'm going to stop. The oil gauge, the engine will stop. You get into a Boeing 747, there's loads more dials up there, but they get 10,000 hours worth of training to understand it. So I will set up a dashboard, the numbers that really matter to my business. What will I put on there? I'm going to put variance. Variance, a lot of people do inventory, they count their stock at the end of every month, sometimes at the end of every week, and then they come out with this percentage figure, 78% gross profit. That's rubbish. Variance is the difference between what you bought, what your register says you've sold or given away or broken or messed, and what you've got left. I deal with companies in America that have 40% variance. 40% of their stock just disappears out of the place. And it's not necessarily because the bartenders are stealing it or drinking it. It could be your point of sale system is just inefficient and people ring it through as open liquor all of the time and stuff like that. It could be your bartenders are just overpouring by 10%, but you never trained them, so it's your fault. You never test them, so it's your fault. So I measure variance, my net profit, not my gross profit, because I can't spend my gross profit. It's at the end of the day when everybody's being paid, what is the profit left at the end of that day? My sales are obviously important. Also customer surveys. We'll talk about it later. I love actually asking my customers formally, how well are we doing? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to tell your friends about this bar? And why did you give us that score? So I get a number between 1 and 10. I've got an average and things like that. But more importantly, the stuff that when I get a low score, and they give me a reason why the low score, I should do less of that. Or I should find solutions to clear up those problems. So stuff that gave me a high score, I need to do more of that. But as I say, to have that customer survey score and to ask every customer, not in a nasty, boring corporate way, in a way that fits in within my bar, but to actually ask your customers, did we do well this evening? You ask them person to person, and they'll say, yeah, it was great, fantastic, because they're too embarrassed to say, you're shit. Whereas to give them an opportunity, if they're pissed off, they'll tell you they're pissed off, and the studies say that they won't then go on Yelp, TripAdvisor, Facebook, and say, fuck these guys. So it's like, give them the opportunity to vent, and you get a whole bunch of free consultancy, which is awesome. This is what my dashboard looks like. This is called a red, yellow, green dashboard. This is a spreadsheet that I will send you. Very simply, this is what I'm measuring. So these are the 4 things that I measured on this dashboard. I then decided what would be really good, what would be acceptable, what would be slightly worrying, and what would be very worrying. And all I do is I associate a color with it. So looking at that, you can very clearly see where I had a problem, where I need to focus. I need to look at my beverage costs, because they've been red and yellow for some time. Why? I now know what I need to focus on. Anybody who's got more than one venue, the red, yellow, green dashboard is incredible, because you can look at your 5 venues, very quickly identify where you need to be going that morning, who you need to be phoning, etc. Just a very simple spreadsheet, but it's a clear dashboard that allows me to look at my business and explain it to other members of staff as well. Partnership and community. This is really important because, as I say, we are part of a community. This is a bar community, but there are other communities you need to care about. Firstly, I hear it an awful lot. I heard people talking about it earlier in terms of like, my bar is my family. Now, I'm a bit of a misfit toy, always have been, a bit weird, a bit quirky, and yet I go to bars, work in bars and restaurants, and they're also misfit toys. Because this is an industry seen as being the refuge of the damned and the socially broken and the incapable and the uncertain and things like that. So it feels like a family, but it's not a family. I have a family. I've got 2 brothers. They're scumbags, but they're still my brothers. When they steal from me or when they beat me up, they are still my brothers. I cannot divorce them. I cannot get rid of them. However, your bar team is a team. It may feel like a family, and anyone who's done serious sport, teammates have a really strong relationship. But if you steal from me, if you break my trust, I will fire you. When you get too slow, too old, when your life priorities change and you're not trying as hard as possible, I will find you another role within the team, or I will say, you've gone as far with us as you can do. We'll get you somewhere else. It may feel like a family, but it is not a family. And it's important to know that from that point of view. Your local industry, the bar across the road from you, be it new or be it established, they're not your competition. They are your community. Because you don't want to drive them out of business. Because if you drive them out of business, not all of their customers are going to come to you. There's now only 1 bar in that street, not 2 bars. You want to help them, because you want more people to come to that area, because there's 2 cool bars there, as opposed to 1 cool bar there. So introduce yourself if you're opening a bar. Make sure you are friends, not just with the local bars and restaurants, but all the local shops and suppliers. Help them, offer them discounts and things like that. Put business their way. It's important. Also your physical community. Literally, the people who live around you. Do volunteering within the area. Hire staff and say, part of this job is you're going to do 3 hours of volunteering once a month. And some people will be like, fuck that. It's like, good, I'm so glad that you're someone that I didn't hire. Because I want people who want to contribute, who want to be nice, who want to help people, because this job is about helping people. If you're too important, too busy to do it, you're not wrong, I'm not wrong, but we're not right together. So that community aspect, create a healthy culture in your business, and as I say, whether it's about meritocracy, openness and things like that, it's important. Identify your partners. You're not just working with the bartenders, you're not just working with your customers, you're working with suppliers, and make sure that you have good relationships with all your suppliers. Don't fuck them over. A lot of people say that we get shat on by everybody in the hospitality industry, and the only people we can fuck over are sales reps. We can miss meetings with them, we can hit them for unnecessary demands, ask them for freebies constantly. You're in partnership with these people. And finally, the idea of reduce antagonism. Customers versus staff, management versus customers, us against the world, is a bad attitude to have. You need to reduce that antagonism and negotiate and make people come together. Workers and partners, we talked about customers and staff and things like that. I always think, as a manager, as a leader, in 20 years' time, what's somebody going to say about me who worked for me for 2 years? You probably know teachers, you probably know people you've worked with in the past, and you're like, oh my God, they were so good, changed my life, just really passionate, inspirational. And other people you're like, really? He was my manager? Nah, I don't remember them at all. So the way you treat people is important. And really what we've learned is that the ideal job offers 4 different categories, 4 different traits that make people realize it's important. Firstly, will people grow if they work for you? Will you teach them skills? Will you work on other aspects of their life, etc.? Will you teach them some of the things that aren't just about wine or beer or cocktails, but life skills? Give them an opportunity where people can grow. They will like working there. Recognition. If they try hard, will they be recognized for it? We're really good as managers at pointing out shit that goes wrong. I'm like the hawk of doom in a restaurant. You know, I'm there and all of a sudden I see something wrong and I swoop down and tell them that they fucked up. Whereas if you tell people when they do well, a pat on the back, a couple of nice words at the right time, if you recognise, if you stand there in pre-shift and don't just talk about what was 86 and what's on sale and what's on special, but point out what this person did last night and how it benefited the business, they will feel better. Everyone will want to be recognised like that. So offer recognition, peer-to-peer awards and things like that. Trust. Do they trust the people they work for? Do they trust the people they work with? If they don't, how are you going to build those relationships? Because if they think you're gouging them, or if they think that you work harder than the person next to them, it will create a bad sense of team. And finally, communication. If they have an idea, how do they talk to you about it? If they've got a problem, how do they talk to you about it? Can you set up a clear, effective meetings, for example, where you accomplish lots of useful stuff? Overwork. In this industry, we fetishize, as managers, hard work, but more importantly, long hours. 60-hour weeks, 70-hour weeks, 80-hour weeks. Nobody works well for 80 hours a week. You may be there, but you stop doing good work at about 55 hours. The idea of reducing the amount of time that people are working. Think about when you got on an aeroplane, they give you a safety demonstration. They say, put on your gas mask before you do the mask of the child next to you. Not because they don't like your kids, but because they realise that if you pass out for lack of oxygen, you're not going to be able to help anybody. So as I say, make sure that you look after yourself by not overworking during this time. And I love peer-to-peer awards. I love an employee of the month, an employee every 3 months, but I don't decide it as a manager. I ask my staff, who do you like working with? Who do you think represents the bar, the business, as well as possible? First 3 months will be back of house. Second 3 months, front of house. Third 3 months will be the management or leadership, and the last one is the best person overall. I pay for it I have a credit card that gets air miles. I use it for all my business expenses, but at the end of the year, the air miles go to the peer-to-peer champion. Give them 100,000 air miles, a week off work, and 1,000 euros. I tell you now, that is one of the best recruitment tools and the best motivation tools that exists out there. And I don't decide it. The staff vote for it, who they actually work with. Communication, we talked about it earlier. Be honest and be open. I fired somebody once. I don't know if anybody's fired people. Firing people is quite hard. But I fired this person because they were fucking up, and they burst into tears. It was a guy 15 years older than me, and I felt embarrassed, and I felt a bit bad by this. And I phoned up my mentor, because I have mentors, and I said, so I just fired someone, they burst into tears. He was like, yeah, you really fucked that one up, didn't you? Really? This is help? He said, what do you mean? He said, well, obviously he wasn't expecting it. You fired him, you should have had 3 conversations with him before to say, dude, you're not living up to standards. Like, you're the worst person here, you're not improving, you need to do this to get better. If you just fire someone without giving them the opportunity, then it's going to be bad. And he said, you need to care enough about this person to be honest, to tell them when they do well, but tell them when they're screwing up. So evaluate them regularly, not a 6-month evaluation, but theoretically, your door is always open, people can come along and talk to you, and you will tell them honestly how well they're doing. Be honest in your job ads. We ask in exit interviews, because we do all exit interviews, we ask people, first thing is, was the job what you thought it was? Secondly, did you have all the tools necessary to do your job? And thirdly, would you recommend this job to a friend? But most of the time people say this job was not what I thought it was, because you told me the ad was wanted, enthusiastic, confident, hard-working individual for busy, high-paced nightclub. You didn't tell me about all the other shit, like cleaning up vomit and restocking fridges and waiting around for 3 hours on summer nights before people come here, etc. Write a good, honest job ad. Share wins, have regular, effective meetings. Send out an agenda to your staff so they know what you're going to be talking about, so they can start thinking about it. Have 10 minutes on this topic, 15 minutes on this topic, 20 minutes on this topic, so people don't get lost in long meetings where nothing gets decided. The art of a meeting, really good in business. Well, now you're running a business, so you better get better at it than the normal goat fuck that we get within hospitality. Be transparent. If there's a problem, tell your staff, because they probably have a solution to it. As long as it's not, we need $1 million more money. But there's a problem, sales aren't good, or breakages are too high, or power's too high. Be honest about it. And as I say, ask your guests how you're doing. Don't just say, hey, how do we do? Did you have a nice time? Physically ask them in a way that they will give you a number and written reports, not to get email addresses so you can bombard them with spam, but actually physically asking people, how well did we do? Did we live up to expectations? Especially if there are problems within the business, ask them specifically, did our staff help you make a recommendation? Because you're trying to get the staff to do more upselling and more menu suggestions and things like that. But ask your guests. A lot of people don't ever do it. You can do a new cocktail list. Why don't you ask your customers, do they like the old cocktail list? Is it too big? Is it too small? Is it too bourbon-fed? Now, asking them is incredible. Finally, social media, don't drink and text. Too many people fuck up businesses because they get drunk, they come home, they find some bullshit review from some drunk in a cab who just didn't get it. They wanted Bud Light and strippers, and you wanted to give them Amaros and vintage cocktails. They were never going to like it. But don't get pissed off with them. Don't respond in anger to them in those times. The manager, the owner, the chef may not be the best person to handle social media. It may be one of those crazy millennials who's actually quite good on social media, etc. But it doesn't always have to be the manager who does it. So the slice committee could work on who would be the best person for this. Secondly, be responsive to every comment. Social media is just word of mouth published. You are getting reviewed 20 times a night, if you're lucky. When I was a bartender, we got reviewed maybe once in our entire career. Nowadays, you Google for a place, it's going to tell me your telephone number, your address, your opening hours, when you get busy, how long people spend there, and every review from all of the sites associated with it. It is terrifying now to Google your bar. So, if you get a bad review, go onto it and say, I'm really sorry you had a bad time. Look, my name's Angus, I'm the manager. I'm there every night from 6 o'clock. Please come in and see me and we'll talk about this. Even if they were completely wrong, it makes a sign that you're responsive. Somebody writes a good review, say, that was awesome, we're so glad you had a fantastic birthday. This is what we're all about. Thanks a lot. Come in and see us. It'd be wicked to hear all about it. But that way you're responding to your customers, and it's really important to do that. You leave it up there because you're pissed off and you think, that guy's a dick anyway. That's a bad review that is going to sit there and people are going to see it. At least if you respond to it, it gets better. Reply to the good and the bad. Some people do neither, some people only do the bad when it comes down to it. But social media is here to stay. It is a massive driver of your business. It's free advertising. It's a great way to put your job ads. Nowadays, with stuff that Facebook's doing, you can have entire intranet sites, which are like Facebook for your business. All those videos you shot and training and things like that can live up there as well. So as I say, it is really important, and I see people screwing this up more often, and use it. Don't ignore it. Don't think it's a passing fad. 1.71 billion people use Facebook. You may like it, you may think it's filled with cat videos and stuff like that, but there's 1.71 billion people who think it's important. So use this shit as much as possible. So hopefully I haven't left any time for Q&A because my beeper went early. If you want to continue the conversation, if you want Q12 surveys, if you want Radio Green dashboards, if you want any of this, anguswinchester@gmail.com, and I'm old enough to have Angus Winchester on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. I hope this has been interesting. More importantly, I hope it's going to be useful and you go away thinking, I thought I was running a good business and I'm doing none of that shit that he's talking about. That is why I'm the insultant. That is why business is going well. Folks, thank you so much.